All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Andy Lin Show. I've got my buddy Elvin here today, and we're going to kick off a new topic. What we wanted to talk about is entrepreneurialism and success for particularly Asian Americans. Both he and I share in common that we have parents that were first generation, and I think that's come with a lot of good things. And unfortunately, I think it's also come with some challenges, if you will, in terms of definition of success and even how to get there. So we thought today would be good to start exploring that topic a bit. And if you're not Asian American, please don't feel like you can't or shouldn't listen in. I know a lot of friends who are of various races and backgrounds that face similar types of pressures coming from their parents and their family. So hopefully everybody will walk away today with a few nuggets of information. All right.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I think this is an issue that a lot of people can relate to, especially young people trying to take a different path than the norm. As far as like my personal journey, I think that I have a lot to offer as far as like telling you about like what I've been through and like how that experience can help you guys kind of take on an alternate path from the norm. So,
absolutely. So maybe we'll start with this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and maybe some of the things that your parents try to kind of hammer really into your head and your psyche as far as back as you can remember? Because I definitely remember all of the messaging that I was trying to get programmed with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in San Francisco. I lived there for 18 years. My parents are immigrants. They're both from Vietnam, and they've all worked corporate jobs, 9 to 5s their whole life. So my dad works for the government in the public transportation sector. My mom works in the hospitality sector, and they've both been in that industry for 20 plus years. So that's all they've ever known. So what I do online coaching. I'm an online influencer on Instagram. And this is something that I still haven't told my parents yet, to be honest. Like, they still don't know I'm doing this. Like, they can't even comprehend me doing something like this. It's just like not like possible to them. They don't know anything else besides getting a job after you go to college. And like part of the reason they've kind of hammered down going to college for me, right now I'm a freshman at Carleton College. And the reason why they've hammered that down so much is because they never got the opportunity to go to college. And I think that this is like true for people across all cultures, whether you're Asian or whatever other ethnicity or race you are. If your parents were immigrants and you never got the opportunity, they never got the opportunity to go to college, like inherently they kind of pressure you to go to college because they never got that chance to. They just had to start from very low entry level jobs and work their way up. The way they view it, when you go to college, you kind of get the brand of the college and inherently you get a head start on everyone else. So that's why I feel like
an entrepreneur in the closet.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. How do you think they would react if they found out now?
Man, I think they'd be like, what the heck are you doing? I mean, focus on your studies. Focus on school. I mean, you're in school to study. But, to be honest, it could be mixed reactions. Like, they could be very supportive of me because I am generating revenue and like I am like doing well with what I'm doing. But at the same time, entrepreneurship is very risky. So you never know what could happen. And like, all I know, every day I'm fighting for my business. If I don't fight for it, the next day it could be gone. So that's the downside of it. So, I mean, there's a reason why I'm still in college. There's a reason I'm still here. And so I think my parents overall, they would not be supportive of it at all. So for me, it just comes down to delivering results. If you're going to do entrepreneurship, go out there and deliver results. Go make it happen because the numbers don't lie, right, Andy? Like,
that's right. No, the numbers don't lie.
If the numbers are there, you show your parents like, hey, mom, dad, this is working. What I'm doing is working. Like, this is something I'm passionate about doing.
Yeah.
I love doing this and it's working. Then they're like, naturally, if I was a parent, I would have to support that. If my kid was like very passionate about something and this is what they want to do with their life, they're finding tremendous happiness in doing it and they're doing well. You don't have to be making $1 million. You're making a living income doing what you love doing. all that matters.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is the very thoughts and internal struggles you're having right now is what I had when I was in college and about to graduate. And I think we are born and we had hammered into us a couple of things, right? A sense of duty to our parents.
Right.
And number two is there's a certain set of careers that bring honor to the family beyond the money, right? Like the money and the income is just one part, but there's something that brings honor to the family, namely being a doctor, a medical doctor, or being a lawyer or being an engineer, right? Something fairly traditional in that sense. But I think, you know, in the short term, I think you've got it nailed. Your parents are probably not going to approve. But if there was somebody that was, you know, that I could have talked to when I was your age, I would have said, you know, at the end of the day, we all love our parents very much.
Right.
But you got to look ahead and say, you know, you've got to spend the next, call it 70 years or 80 years with yourself and being good with who you are and what you want to chase.
Right.
And your parents are, you know, call it roughly half that time, right? So you have to be happy with yourself. And while your parents' approval is important, the thing that I wish I could have pivoted more quickly was it's important, but it's not the number one priority. The number one priority is, what does Elvin want to do, right? So I think they all come from the right spot. I mean, they all want us to be happy. They want us to be in a position where they don't feel like they had to go struggle. Like they don't want us to struggle the way they did.
Right.
And so their heart's in the right place, but I think their view and their definition of success is a bit more narrow, just given the way they grew up and given their life experiences, right? And for you, right, you've learned the power of social media. You've learned the power of connecting with people. You've learned the power of communications. You learned how being an entrepreneur can have a really big payoff and be something you really enjoy. And that's not something, you know, the parental generation can get their brain around, because it's just not what they grew up with. But in the end, right, like you got to do what makes you happy. And I think even if it's the first, 3-5 years where they're not really sure and they're basically trying to leverage their power as parents to kind of get you to follow the path they want you to, in the end, they will come around. I mean, that's what happened to me. But, you know, hopefully, you know, it doesn't have to be an either or, right? Like as we talked about before, right? Like I ended up not going to be a doctor. I did take kind of a safer path with being in corporate, but I think I've really carved out a niche being the entrepreneur within a corporate environment, the so-called intrapreneurship. So there's many paths to success, many paths to income. And so, you know, one of the things that I think has gotten beaten into a lot of Asian Americans is it's either or, right? Like you're either this or that.
Exactly.
And I like to just replace or with and, right? Like you can do a bunch of things. You're still young. There's nothing that says you can't try all these different things to find what it is that you really enjoy doing and then focus on that.
Right. And I think it's very important for the individual to kind of take the initiative to say like, no, maybe this is not what I want to do. But at the same time, if there's like parents watching this video, I feel like there's just that we should all like adopt a more like open mindset to like our children, especially because like at the end of the day, I know my parents, when I was growing up, like I really wanted to spend a lot of my free time playing basketball, right?
Right.
My parents would be like, no, don't play basketball. You're wasting your time. Like, that's not going to help you with your studies. And I feel like parents, like, they really try to be really controlling. And I feel like parents should adopt that, like, really open mindset to allow their children to pursue the interests they wanted to pursue, which was, for me, it was basketball. And I was kind of different from a lot of the kids because, like, I would be like, as like a 10-year-old, no, I want to play basketball no matter what. Like, I would not let my parents not allow me to play basketball. Like, my parents wouldn't drive me to the basketball games, but I would get my friends' parents to drive me to the basketball games. So I was one of those kids that would just like find my way no matter what, because I knew what I wanted and I wasn't going to let my parents stop me from getting what I want. But, you know, I feel like that's not what every kid is like. Like, there's parents that can be like really controlling, and you are who you are. Like, my mom is a very controlling person and it's always her way. So I'm kind of like that's kind of passed down to me. So I'm also that way because I'm like, okay, this is what I want. So initially we kind of clashed a little bit. But for a lot of kids, I feel like they kind of like they don't get to fully express themselves because like their parents are like hindering them, like putting a barrier on them. And I feel like, yeah, if my parents would have like completely just like shut the door and like not allow me to leave the house at all, that would have like kind of put me into a box, and I wouldn't have been able to become the person I am today. If like, even though my parents were not supportive, they didn't necessarily like put an absolute like restriction, because there's parents out there that say like, you're not like, you have to be back by 9 o'clock at night. If you're not coming into the house, like you're not getting your allowance or whatever. Like they put a box around their children, and like that, the way it is the way it is. So I feel like that can be like very detrimental.
I think it can be. And
Right.
I think that especially when you're at that age, 9 or 10 years old, it definitely can have an effect on you. But I also think, as an individual like yourself, right?
Right.
As you grow, as you get out to have the college experience where your parents basically aren't around you 24/7, right? You get the opportunity to really think through things and say, hey, is this really what I want to do? Or, I was on the path of being a doctor. I was pre-med, taking all of my molecular cell biology classes, and it was junior year, and I was volunteering at a hospital. And it really hit me at that moment. I can't tell you why.
Right.
Like, this is just not for me. I cannot do this. And, despite my parents, really buckling down, as you said,
Right.
it really didn't change my mind, because at that point, you have the maturity to know, even if I have to go down a path that they don't approve, it is my path.
Right.
I think there's a lot of old school thinking from parents where, look, let's face it, right? Whether it's Vietnam or Taiwan or China or Korea or Japan, right? The safest route, the route that guaranteed you the best possible life, guaranteed, quote unquote, right?
Right.
Was the middle class. And that's where they're striving to get all of their children, is to be in that middle class or upper middle class.
Right.
And what they don't realize is, with the economy and the society that we have today, which is really global, middle class is actually one of the most dangerous places to be. You really need to be in the upper class, right?
Right.
And the true chances of getting into the upper class is you've got to build some entrepreneurialism into your life, into your career, right? You got to be willing to take some risks. You got to be willing to take your lessons learned and your failures and say, how do I do better next time? And that's really not something that's born into the first generation immigrants, right? And you would think, wow, they took all these risks, right, to leave their home country to come here.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to their kids, they're like, well, I don't want them to take that risk and, have them go through the trials and tribulations. And so I think their hearts are all in the right place. Like, I'm a parent now, so I get to sort of sit on the other side of the table.
Right.
And I'm not a perfect parent by any stretch of the imagination, right? There's times where, I wish I would have let my sons kind of make that decision a little bit further down the line.
Right.
But I also think there are things where, because we do have some experience, being older now, right? We want to make sure our kids are focusing on the right things. But again, I think the lesson learned I have is, we've made it such a binary thing, right? Like, you could have played basketball and had good grades,
right,
and run your side business. Like, there's no reason why you can't pull off all of those things. It comes down to your priorities. Like, if you get more than 3 or 4, okay, then maybe you have a discussion like, hey, maybe we should prioritize, because if you're going to do these 3 things and you want to go hang out with friends and you want to go do this, you may not have enough time to do well at anything, and then you become sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, and that's really not good either. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing that we as Asian Americans had to break through in our generation, being kind of the second generation here, is not constraining ourselves to one thing or another, and getting the right perspective on our parents' approval, right? Like, I think parents give off this impression like, if you don't have my approval, your life and your world is going to end. But the truth is, if you just take a step back, you realize it's not that you shouldn't value your parents' opinion, but at the end of the day, it's another opinion, right? It's another input. But in the end, we're at what's up here, right? It's what you have here that's processing all those inputs. Say, but here's where I really want to go. You just got to go for it.